Our first scripture lesson for today comes from Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 6 of the New Revised Standard Version. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, Take off the gold rings that are on your ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people took off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it in a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord." They rose early the next day and burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel. Thanks be to God, and may God bless our reading and hearing of the scripture. Let us join together in singing "Spirit, Spirit of Gentleness," found on page 2120 in the black hymnal or on the screens.
Picking up at verse 7, in chapter 32. The Lord said to Moses, "Go down at once. Your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have acted perversely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I commanded them. They have cast for themselves an image of a calf, and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it, and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.' The Lord said to Moses, 'I have seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone, so that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and of you I will make a great nation.' But Moses implored the Lord, his God, and said, 'O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce wrath, change your mind, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, how you swore to them by your own self, saying to them, I will multiply your descendants like the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. And the Lord changed his mind about the disaster that he planned to bring on his people." God bless our reading and hearing of the scripture. Thanks be to God. So last week we talked about the children of Israel wandering in the wilderness, and they were whining and complaining. And when they whined and they complained, God responded and gave them what they asked for. That was good. Then in chapter 20, Moses went up to the mountain and brought back down the Ten Commandments. Now we're in chapter 32. So in between that time, God and Moses had more conversation. God and Moses had more conversation about more law to clarify what the Ten Commandments is really about this law and about that law. You can read that. Go back and read that. You'll find out more information about what this law really means, and this law, and that law, and more clarification. And then he went back up the mountain and had another conversation with Moses about building the tabernacle and what that might look like, and some other discussion that God had with Moses. And before he went up that mountain to talk to God for 40 days and 40 nights, Moses said to the people, "Now I'm going up the mountain to talk to God, and I'm leaving with you Aaron and Hur. And so, if you have a dispute, talk to those two, and they'll take care of it." And off Moses went. Well, during that time, the people got a little disturbed and upset because they decided that they didn't have a leader anymore. There was a vacuum of leadership, they decided, and they decided to take matters in their own hands, like people sometimes do. And they became impatient with Moses because he was not there. Where is Moses? We can't possibly do anything without him. Where is Moses? He's left us forever. Where is he, Aaron? Has he left us forever? Has God left us in this wilderness to die once again? Is he ever going to come back? Is he ever going to come back down that mountain ever again? Aaron had a problem on his hands. The people became impatient with him. Now, I don't know about you, but I become impatient from time to time. How about you? Any impatience among you? I hear some. Just a little? A bit. We become impatient when things do not go our way, when things become out of control, or when we don't get what we want or how we think we want things to go in our lives. We become impatient with our loved ones when they don't do what we want them to do or how we want them to do it. Because after all, if they just did it the way we want it done, then it would be done the right way, right? And so we become impatient with them. We become impatient with God because we, after all, have prayed to God and we have asked God to provide what we want. And so if God would just answer us and do what we want God to do, it would be done. So we become impatient because we want what we want when we want it. And we want what we want now. We have become a society of now. So if I go on to Amazon.com and I purchase it now, when can I get it? When can I get it? In 2 days. Now, if I lived in New York City and if I ordered it at 9 o'clock, when could I get it? That afternoon at 4 o'clock. And if you go on Amazon.com, they'll tell you that. If you live in certain parts of the country, you could get it in the afternoon if you buy it in the morning. Not in Norfolk, Nebraska. I'm sorry to say. We want what we want, and we want it now. And so if I want something really, really bad, I can get it now. Because we want it now. And if we don't get it when it's supposed to come in, what happens to us? If Amazon.com told me it was supposed to come in 2 days and it comes in 3 days, what happens? Well, we're on the phone or we're on the internet and we're telling them It came a day late. And so blah, 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 blah. Well, let me tell you what. I ordered 2 things from Amazon.com for my kids for Christmas, and they didn't come at all. Yeah, that didn't go well at all. I got it in January, actually, and I got those 2 things for free. So then, in the end, I got 4 things. I was not happy. I was not a happy camper. I was very impatient with them on the phone, and so then Neil had to call back and deal with it all. You said what? Impatience. Impatience is a real problem for us. When do strawberries come out in the season? When do they really come into season? June. June. And when do we eat them? Now? Always. Really? They used to come out only in June. When I grew up in Arkansas, there's a place in the world called Bald Knob, Arkansas. It is the greatest little town. It's a town of 3,000. And that's where you go to get the best strawberries in the world in June or July, depending upon your schedule. And you go there, and that is the only time you go there to get your strawberries for the year. And how do you deal with that? You get the largest box of strawberries, and you can either go there and you can just buy them, or you can go out into the field and pick them yourself. It is the greatest joy in the whole wide world. But now, we can buy them anytime we want, whether or not they taste good or not. Because we want strawberries in the middle of December anyway, don't we? We used to have to wait for them, but not anymore. Because we want them, and we want them now. And I want them now too, so I have them in my refrigerator, and they're not from Bald Knob, Arkansas. Impatience. We are impatient. Which then leads us to this thing called idolatry. The people became so impatient, they thought that they did not have their leader. So they said to Aaron, Aaron, something has to be done. Our leader is gone. God is gone. And so we have to have a leader that we can see. See, faith and trust is a necessary thing for us as human beings if we're going to actually believe in God. Can we see God? Can we see God? No, we can't see God. God is something other outside of us that we really can't see. And so Hebrews in the New Testament tells us that faith is trusting in something that we cannot see. But the Israelites couldn't really get their head around that fact, and so they turned faith into something totally other than what faith and trust actually means. And so they were really very disobedient to God, and they fell into the trap of sin and built a calf, something that is totally other than what God truly is, and built an idol so that they could worship something other than who God really is. An idol, something that we place in front of us that truly isn't us, that truly isn't God, something that's more important than God is an idol. God's supposed to be the most important being in our lives. The most important priority that we have is God. And anything that comes in front of God is an idol. So it could be anything, really. And in our society today, we could put there's a long list of idols. Could be money, of course, and our jobs to make that kind of money. Our employment becomes an idol. Well, I've got to do this and this and this, and that becomes more important than anything else in our lives, including our family and our friends. And our family can get in our way with our relationship with God. It becomes more important than our relationship with God. Several years ago, on the way to get ready for Easter, a church member came up to me and said, "Now, Pastor, I need for you to know that I will not be in worship to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead." That's an extra wording on my part. "Because my family is coming into town, and I will be needing to get the ham in the oven and get all the other extra goodies ready for them because they're expecting me to provide the family meal, and they will be at the house anyway. So, happy Easter." Really? So you're going to celebrate Easter, and you're not going to be at church to celebrate Easter because you're going to be at home with your family celebrating Easter. That's right. Oh. So I thought to myself, maybe you could stay home on Easter Sunday. And then I thought this morning, maybe Linda and I could stay home on Easter Sunday. What do you think? What do you think? Would that be possible? Linda and I thought that was a great idea. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because what's really important, it's not the ham on Easter Sunday. Actually, it's quite ironic. Jesus was Jewish. What's really important is our relationship first with God. And when we place God first, all that other stuff that's really important. Family is important. My family is very, very important to me. I talk to my kids every day. They're very, very important to me. My spouse is very, very important to me. Don't get me wrong. But God is most important in our lives. And when we place other stuff important to us, it can and it will become an idol. Now, how did it get this far? How did these people turn their impatience into a lack of faith? How did it turn into sin and disobedience and then turn into idolatry? How did it get this far in the first place? Aaron. Aaron, the leader who had been on this journey with Moses this whole time that God gave to him, his brother. Why did he do this? Well, he didn't want this mass of people in front of him, I think maybe not to hate him forever. Think about that. He's standing in front of a people like maybe you, and they're all yelling at him. What are we going to do? Moses is gone. What are we going to do? And he caved. Now, if we look at the rest of the text, after the cow was actually made, he said, now we're going to worship the Lord. So I don't think that he was a complete idiot. He was just half of an idiot. He was a people pleaser. He wanted to please the people. He didn't really want to make a stand and stand on it. Instead, he pleased the people to make them happy instead of making God happy. Neil and I went to Florida earlier this month to, first of all, do a continuing education event that was at Walt Disney World. Darn. It was awesome, actually. It was a creativity conference, and one of our presenters was an executive from Walt Disney World. We actually learned quite a bit. And one of the days was supposed to be a day at Walt Disney World. We didn't actually go into Walt Disney World. We did everything but going actually into it, and got my picture made with Minnie Mouse, who's the best, and then Mickey Mouse and Goofy and all of those. I was in a store, walking around and milling in the store, buying socks, because I have an addiction to socks, and I was walking around in the store. There was this woman who was trying to have a conversation with her child, who was on the floor, having the greatest fit I have ever seen. Oh, it was awesome. It was great. You would have been proud. I mean, it was great. The mom was holding on to a toy. Now, I don't know if you've been to Walt Disney World and have seen the toys that they manufacture. I mean, these are awesome toys. They're great. So this one had had a Buzz Lightyear on top of it, and they glow. They really glow, and they light up. Wesley has one of those, and he still has it, actually. It's awesome. Now they have bubbles that come out of them. Oh man, it's great. I wanted one of those, but Neil wouldn't buy it for me. She had one of those, and this child was just screaming at the top of her lungs. She wanted that toy. And the mom had the toy, and she looked down at the child and said, "I'm buying it for you. Here it is." I said to myself, oh, what a life that mom's gonna have. She's lost already. You know what I mean, don't you? The child's won. The child's won. My son did that twice. That was it. I won. When we give in to those kind of tantrums, the tantrum wins and not the rest of the people. Everybody in the store lost that day. The child won. And we in the church, when we give in to one or two people because they're doing whatever they're doing, because we're people pleasers and we don't want to cause a scene or we don't want to cause them to do whatever they're doing, and we give in to them because we're people pleasers, then all the rest of the people then lose. That's what Aaron did. He didn't want to take a stand. He didn't want to say, no, this is what we're doing. Instead, he made everybody else happy. For the short term, anyway. We need to rethink how we do that. Rethink how we make those kinds of decisions as we go forward into the future. We all do it. We all sometimes make those decisions just to make people happy so that we can move on. We've all done that in our own lives. The good news comes in the following text that I read. God was really mad. God was really upset. And God looked at Moses and just said, "Leave me alone." Because God was really mad. He looked down and said, "Look, you brought these people out of Egypt. You go down and you deal with it because these are terrible people and I'm going to make you a nation." And Moses did something really brave. He stood up to God and he said, "God, I didn't bring these people out of Egypt. You did. You brought them out of the land of Egypt. You're the one that opened the Red Sea. I'm just the one who stood and did it. You did it. You are the one who reminded this group of people that you are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. You are that God. You don't want Egypt to look at you and say, oh, yeah, that God just brought them there to kill them. You don't want that kind of reputation. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You want to be a God who is a forgiving and gracious and loving God. And you know what God did? What did God do? You heard it. What did God do? Oh my goodness. God did that. God did that because God is a loving, forgiving, compassionate, and gracious God. So even when you and I are impatient, and even when we lack faith and trust in God, and even when other things become more important than God, and even when we cave, God is there for us because God adores you and me. God loves you and me so much that God came to us in Jesus Christ so that you and I might have abundant life, so that we might live that life so fully and so graciously. Know that and understand that. Amen.